happy man.
Postman Pat gets a pet. Every day, Postman Pat sets out with his good cat Jess by his side. But there was a time, a long time ago, when Pat had no cat. He was alone in his red van, and he had no Jess to talk to as he drove along. It all began with the white mice. Every Saturday, Pat and Sarah and Julian go to Pencaster Market in the Greendale bus to do their shopping. One Saturday was busier than ever. There was such a lot of shopping to do. Pat and Sarah filled their bags and baskets with potatoes and onions and oranges and sprouts and lettuces and cheese.
"Could you hold the carrots, Julian?" said Sarah.
"Could you hold the apples and grapefruit, Julian?" said Pat. Julian's arms were full of shopping, and he thought it would never end. He was so tired. There was a long queue at the butcher's and another at the fish shop. Sarah and Pat looked in every shop and stopped to talk to all their friends.
"Oh, come on," said Julian. "Be patient," said Sarah.
They walked past the toy shop full of trains and planes and dolls. They walked past a shop full of radios and cassette players. They did not stop. Then they did stop to talk to Miss Hubbard.
"Look," said Julian.
They had stopped outside the pet shop. There in the window was a cage full of white mice. One of the mice was looking out at Julian and twitching its whiskers.
"A little white mouse," said Julian. "I'd love a little white mouse."
"Oh," said Pat, "I'm not sure I like mice."
"I always wanted one when I was little," said Sarah. "But my mum would never let me." "I'd love a mouse," said Julian. "You need 2 or 3 to keep each other company," said Sarah. "Well, we'll go in and look at them."
Sarah and Julian went in the pet shop. Pat stayed outside, talking to Miss Hubbard, or at least listening to her. He was saying goodbye to Miss Hubbard just as Julian and Sarah came out again, carrying a cage with 4 mice in it. "What have you got there?" said Pat.
"Mini tigers," said Sarah. "Aren't they lovely?" said Julian.
Said Pat, "I'm not too sure. Ouch!" He had poked his finger between the bars of the cage, and a little brown mouse gave it a good nip.
"You frightened it," said Sarah. "That's why it bit you. They have to get used to you."
"I don't think I'll get used to it," said Pat.
"What shall we call them?" said Julian.
"You can call that one Nipper," said Pat.
"And the white ones are Bess and Bill," said Julian. "And the black and white ones, Jess," said Sarah.
It was soon time to catch the bus home to Greendale. Many of their friends were on the bus with their bags of shopping. They saw Miss Hubbard and Granny Dryden and all the Thompsons. The Reverend Timms jumped in just as the bus was getting ready to start. "Can't be bothered with the old car on Saturdays," he said. "There's just nowhere to park. Hello, what have you got there? White mice? Bless me, I had some white mice when I was a boy. What a lovely present." All went well until Julian put the cage of mice on the seat beside him and looked out of the window to wave at Peter Fogg on his tractor. When he looked back at the mice, there was Nipper sitting on top of the cage, looking all about him with great interest. He had never seen a bus before, and meant to find out all about it.
"Dad," said Julian, "quick, one's got out."
Pat stretched his hand out. Sarah pulled it back.
"You don't want another bite," she said. I'll get my gloves on, then I can pick it up.
But before she could do anything, Nipper jumped off the cage, ran along the seat, up the back and over, and jumped into Dorothy Thompson's lap. She screamed.
"Oh, a mouse! Oh, a mouse! Help!"
And she jumped up, shaking Nipper off her coat and onto the floor. Now it ran between the Reverend's legs. He tried to catch it, but it was too quick for him. It was away along the length of the bus, making people jump and squeal as it tickled their feet. The driver stopped the bus in a lay-by to see what the trouble was, and joined in the hunt for the mouse. Everyone tried to catch that little mouse, and whilst they were busy, the other three squeezed out between the bars of the cage and ran for freedom. What a rumption there was in the Greendale bus that day! Some people were creeping about on their hands and knees looking for the mice and shouting to each other, whilst others sat with their feet tucked up on the seats out of the way of mouse nips. It was the Reverend Timms who put things to rights in the end. He said in his best church voice, "Dear friends, if you will all sit still and quiet, I'll catch those mice in a trice. I kept mice as a boy, and I know what to do." At the sound of his voice, everyone calmed down and sat quietly. The Reverend borrowed a plastic bucket that Granny Dryden had bought in the market, and some crumbs of cake from Miss Hubbard. He put the cake in the bucket and the bucket on the floor, sideways, and waited. Everyone sat still. You would have thought there was no one in that bus. It was so quiet. But you could hear a scurrying and a scratching as the 4 mice explored the bus, and then a patter-patter sound when they found the bucket, and their little paws tapped on the smooth plastic. Then a tiny munching sound as they ate the cake. The Reverend picked up the bucket and held it the right way up. There were the 4 little mice in the bottom of the bucket, and no matter what they did, they could not get out again. The plastic was too slippery for them to climb. Granny Dryden said they could borrow her bucket if they gave it a good washing out afterwards.
"It's no good you putting them back in that cage," she said. "They'll only get out again."
So the mice had to live in the bucket for a day or 2 until Pat could think what to do. When Mrs. Goggins heard about the trouble with the mice, she said,
"If you get a bigger pet, it won't squeeze between the bars. Why don't you get a hamster? They're lovely. There were some folks on holiday last summer. They had one, and it was a real beauty. They used to bring it in to show me. It never bit anyone, and the little girl loved it."
So Pat asked Julian, and he said,
"All right."
And Pat caught the bus to Pencaster on Tuesday afternoon with the cage and the bucket of mice, and came back with a hamster in the cage and the empty bucket.